Section 5 of the Arabian Nights Entertainments, Volume 3, translated by Jonathan Scott. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Gillian Hendry. The Arabian Nights Entertainments, Volume 3, translated by Jonathan Scott, 1754 to 1829. Section 5. The Story of Bedr, Prince of Persia, and Jahan Aara, Princess of Samandal or Samandar. Part 5. The young King of Persia had no sooner got out of the city than he began to reflect with joy on his deliverance, and that he had the sorceress in his power, who had given him so much cause to tremble. 3 days after, he arrived at a great city, where, entering the suburbs, he met a venerable old man, walking towards a pleasure house. "Sir," said the old man, stopping him, "may I presume to ask from what part of the world you come?" The king halted to satisfy him, and as they were conversing together, an old woman came up, who, stopping likewise, wept and sighed heavily at the sight of the mare. King Bedr and the old man left off discoursing to look at the old woman, whom the king asked what cause she had to be so much afflicted. "Alas, sir," replied she, "it is because your mare resembles so perfectly one my son had, and which I still mourn the loss of on his account, and should think yours were the same, did I not know she was dead. Sell her to me, I beseech you. I will give you more than she is worth, and thank you too." "Good woman," replied King Bedr, "I am heartily sorry I cannot comply with your request. My mare is not to be sold." "Alas, sir," continued the old woman, "do not refuse me this favour for the love of God. My son and I shall certainly die with grief if you do not grant it." "Good mother," replied the king, "I would grant it with all my heart, if I were disposed to part with so good a beast. But if I were so disposed, I believe you would hardly give 1,000 pieces of gold for her, and I could not sell her for less." "Why should I not give so much?" replied the old woman. "If that be the lowest price, you need only say you will take it, and I will fetch you the money." King Bedr, seeing the old woman so poorly dressed, could not imagine she could find such a sum, and said, to try her, "Go, fetch me the money, and the mare is yours." The old woman immediately unloosed a purse she carried fastened to her girdle, and desiring him to alight, bade him tell over the money, and in case he found it came short of the sum demanded, she said her house was not far off, and she could quickly fetch the rest. The surprise of King Bedr at the sight of the purse was not small. "Good woman," said he, "do you not perceive I have bantered you all this while? I assure you my mare is not to be sold." The old man, who had been witness to all that had passed, now began to speak. "Son," said he to King Bedr, "it is necessary you should know one thing, which I find you are ignorant of, and that is, that in this city it is not permitted to any one to tell a lie, on any account whatsoever, on pain of death. You cannot refuse taking this good woman's money, and delivering your mare, when she gives you the sum according to the agreement; and this you had better do without any noise, than expose yourself to what may ensue." King Bedr, mortified to find himself thus trapped by his rash proffer, alighted with great regret. The old woman stood ready to seize the reins, immediately unbridled the mare, and taking some water in her hand, from a stream that ran in the middle of the street, threw it in the mare's face, uttering these words: "Daughter, quit that strange shape, and reassume thy own." The transformation was effected in a moment, and King Bedr, who swooned as soon as he saw Queen Labe appear, would have fallen to the ground, if the old man had not hindered him. The old woman, who was the mother of Queen Labe, and had instructed her in all her magic secrets, had no sooner embraced her daughter, than, to show her fury, she in an instant, by whistling, caused to rise a genie of a gigantic form and stature. This genie immediately took King Bedr on one shoulder, and the old woman with the magic queen on the other, and transported them in a few minutes to the palace of Queen Labe in the City of Enchantments. The magic queen immediately fell upon King Beder, reproaching him violently. "Is it thus," said she, "ungrateful wretch, that thy unworthy uncle and thou repay me for all the kindnesses I have done you? I shall soon make you both feel what you deserve." She said no more, but taking water in her hand, threw it in his face with these words, "Quit the form of man, and take that of an owl." These words were soon followed by the effect, and immediately she commanded one of her women to shut up the owl in a cage, and give him neither meat nor drink. The woman took the cage, but without regarding what the queen had ordered, gave him both meat and drink, and being old Abdallah's friend, sent him word privately how the queen had treated his nephew, and apprised him of her design to destroy both him and King Beder, that he might take measures to prevent her intentions and secure himself. Abdallah knew no common means would do with Queen Labe. He therefore whistled in a peculiar manner, and there immediately arose a giant with 4 wings, who, presenting himself before him, asked what he would have. "Lightning," said Abdallah to him, for so was the genie called, "I command you to preserve the life of King Beder, son of Queen Gulnare. Go to the palace of the magic queen, and transport immediately to the capital of Persia the compassionate woman who has the cage in custody, to the end she may inform Queen Gulnare of the danger the king her son is in, and the occasion he has for her assistance. Take care not to frighten her when you come before her, and acquaint her from me what she ought to do." Lightning immediately disappeared, and in an instant reached the palace of the magic queen. He instructed the woman, lifted her up into the air, and transported her to the capital of Persia, where he placed her on the terrace of Gulnare's palace. She descended into her apartment, and there found Queen Gulnare and Queen Farasche her mother lamenting their mutual misfortunes. She made them a profound reverence, and by the relation she gave them, they soon understood the great need King Beder had of their assistance. Queen Gulnare was so overjoyed at the news, that rising from her seat, she went and embraced the good woman, telling her how much she was obliged to her for the service she had done her. Then going immediately out, she commanded the trumpets to sound, and the drums to beat, to acquaint the city that the king of Persia would suddenly return safe to his kingdom. She then went and found King Saleh her brother, whom Farasche had caused to come speedily thither by a certain fumigation. "Brother," said she to him, "the king your nephew, my dear son, is in the City of Enchantments, under the power of Queen Labe. Both you and I must go to deliver him, for there is no time to be lost." King Saleh forthwith assembled a puissant body of his marine troops, who soon rose out of the sea. He also called to his assistance the genii, his allies, who appeared with a much more numerous army than his own. As soon as the 2 armies were joined, he put himself at the head of them, with Queen Farasche, Queen Gulnare, and the princesses, who would all have their share in this enterprise. They then ascended into the air, and soon poured down on the palace and City of Enchantments, where the magic queen, her mother, and all the adorers of fire were destroyed in an instant. Queen Gulnare had ordered the woman who brought the account of Queen Labe's transforming and imprisoning her son to follow her close, and bade her in the confusion go and seize the cage, and bring it to her. This order was executed as she wished, and Queen Gulnare was no sooner in possession of the cage than she opened it and took out the owl, saying, as she sprinkled a little water upon him, "My dear son, quit that strange form, and resume thy natural one of a man." In a moment Queen Gulnare, instead of the hideous owl, beheld King Beder her son. She immediately embraced him with an excess of joy, her tears supplying more forcibly the place of words. She could not let him go, and Queen Farasche was obliged to force him from her in her turn. After her he was likewise embraced by the king his uncle and his relations. Queen Gulnare's first care was to look out for old Abdallah, to whom she had been obliged for the recovery of the king of Persia, and who, being brought to her, she said to him, My obligations to you have been so great that there is nothing within my power but I would freely do for you, as a token of my acknowledgment. Do but inform me in what I can serve you." "Great Queen," replied Abdallah, "if the lady whom I sent to your majesty will but consent to the marriage I offer her, and the king of Persia will give me leave to reside at his court, I will spend the remainder of my days in his service." The queen then turned to the lady, who was present, and finding by her modest shame that she was not averse to the match proposed, she caused them to join hands, and the king of Persia and she took care of their fortune. This marriage occasioned the king of Persia to speak thus to the queen: "Madam," said he, "I am heartily glad of this match which your majesty has just made. There remains one more, which I desire you to think of." Queen Gulnare did not at first comprehend what marriage he meant, but after a little considering, she said, "Of yours you mean, son. I consent to it with all my heart." Then turning and looking at her brother's sea attendants and the genie who were still present, "Go," said she, "and traverse both sea and land, to seek the most lovely and amiable princess worthy of the king my son, and when you have found her, come and tell us." "Madam," replied King Beder, "it is to no purpose for them to take all that trouble. You have no doubt heard that I have already given my heart to the princess of Samandal, upon the bare relation of her beauty. I have seen her, and do not repent of the present I then made her. In a word, neither earth nor sea, in my opinion, can furnish a princess like her. It is true, upon my declaring my love, she treated me in a way that would have extinguished any flame less strong than mine. But I hold her excused. She could not treat me with less rigour after your imprisoning the king her father, of which I was the innocent cause. But the king of Samandal may, perhaps, have changed his resolution, and his daughter the princess may consent to love me, when she sees her father has agreed to it." "Son," replied Queen Gulnare, "if only the Princess Jahan Aara can make you happy, it is not my design to oppose you. The king your uncle need only have the king of Samandal brought, and we shall see whether he be still of the same untractable temper." Strictly as the king of Samandal had been kept during his captivity by King Saleh's orders, yet he always had great respect shown him. King Saleh caused a chafing dish of coals to be brought, into which he threw a certain composition, uttering at the same time some mysterious words. As soon as the smoke began to arise, the palace shook, and immediately the king of Samandal, with King Saleh's officers, appeared. The king of Persia cast himself at the king of Samandal's feet, and kneeling said, "It is no longer King Saleh that demands of your majesty the honour of your alliance for the king of Persia. It is the king of Persia himself that humbly begs that boon. And I persuade myself your majesty will not persist in being the cause of the death of a king, who can no longer live if he does not share life with the amiable Princess Jahan Aara." The king of Samandal did not long suffer the king of Persia to remain at his feet. He embraced him, and obliging him to rise, said, "I shall be sorry to have contributed in the least to the death of a monarch who is so worthy to live. If it be true that so precious a life cannot be preserved without the possession of my daughter, live, sir, she is yours. She has always been obedient to my will, and I cannot think she will now oppose it." Speaking these words, he ordered one of his officers, whom King Saleh had permitted to attend him, to go for the princess, and bring her to him immediately. The princess continued where the king of Persia had left her. The officer perceived her, and brought her soon with her women. The king of Samandal embraced her, and said, "Daughter, I have provided a husband for you. It is the king of Persia, the most accomplished monarch at present in the universe. The preference he has given you over all other princesses obliges us both to express our gratitude." "Sir," replied the Princess Jahan Aara,
Your majesty well knows I never have presumed to disobey your will. I shall always be ready to obey you, and I hope the king of Persia will forget my ill treatment of him, and consider it was duty, not inclination, that forced me to it." The nuptials were celebrated in the palace of the City of Enchantments, with the greatest solemnity, as all the lovers of the magic queen, who had resumed their pristine forms as soon as she ceased to live, assisted at them, and came to return their thanks to the king of Persia, Queen Gulnare, and King Saleh. They were all sons of kings, princes, or persons of high rank. King Saleh conducted the king of Samandal to his dominions, and put him again in possession of his throne. The king of Persia, at the height of his wishes, returned to his capital with Queen Gulnare, Queen Farasche, and the princesses. The Queen Farasche and the princesses continued there till King Saleh came to reconduct them to his kingdom under the waves of the sea. End of section 5. End of The Story of Beder, Prince of Persia, and Jahan Aara, Princess of Samandal or Samandar.